Alright, quarter two. So we are halfway through the year. We're gonna test on everything that we've covered from the beginning of day one in quarter two. So it's gonna be a one-time test. It's a big deal. You gotta do very well on it. You gotta study hard and come in prepared. You can use any notes. So make sure you spend some time understanding all of the material on the review. So first off, factoring. Quadratics. Let's look at 7. So r squared plus r minus 42. And we used the template quite a bit. You've got to multiply to get a negative 42. But you add to get the middle. And the middle number is just a 1. So 42, you start going through your options either from your head or your calculator. 1 and 42. 2 and 21. 3 is gonna work. How many times is 3 going to 42? So on a calculator, 42 divided by 3. 3 and 14 will work. 4 is not gonna work. 5 is not. 6 and 7, and that's it. So those are your ways you can times and get 42. The only pair that's gonna add and give you a 1 is a 6 and a 7, but one of them has to be negative. And because I've got to multiply to get a negative 42. The only way you can times get a negative is if one of them's positive and one of them's negative. So you can have one of each. And the one that has to be negative is the 6. Because a negative 6 plus 7 is a positive 1. So if I factor it, it's going to look like this. R minus 6 and R plus 7. The order does not matter. Okay. Let's look at, I'm just going to do a couple of these because we're not going to have time to go over every single problem. So you guys go through every problem and we'll go over enough to make sure that you know what you're doing. So I think 8 you can handle. Let's look at 9. It's got to times and give you 24, but it's got to add and give you a negative 11. So 24, my options are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8. And 4 and 6, and I'm going to use 3 and 8 because I can get an 11 out of a 3 and 8, but I need a negative 11, so that means they both must be negative. A negative 3 and a negative 8 is a negative 11, but when I times them, it's a positive 24 because a negative times a negative is a positive. So if I factor it, it should look like this: b minus 3 and b minus 8. Okay, I'm going to skip down to 11 and 12. These are interesting because they only have 2 pieces. This is missing my last piece, which is 0. But 12 is actually missing my middle piece. I have the last piece. So one of them is missing the end, one of them is missing the middle. So let's look at 11. 11, what's going to multiply and give me 0, add and give me 10? And the answer to that is, the only way I can times and get 0 is 0. So 0 and 10. So my answer is going to be x plus a 0, x plus a 10, or that's the exact same thing as x times x plus 10. Okay, 12. Now what is going to add and give me 0, but times and give me a negative 4? And that has to be, what does that have to be? A minus 2 and a plus 2. Because a minus 2 plus 2 is 0, but a minus 2 times 2 is a negative 4. So my answer to this one is x minus 2 and x plus 2. Okay, so now you're going to use factoring to start graphing quadratics. So let's keep factoring. Before we get into this guy right here, this is what we're going to factor and graph. But before we do that, let's try some hard ones. So the first ones you did were kind of easy, but these next 6 are not easy. So the first ones are easy because they're simplified. They always start with a 1. Every single one of them started with a 1. That started with a 1. This started with a 1. So when they start with 1, they're simplified already. But look at number 1. Number 1, each of these 3 terms has something in common. So if I look at these 3, what they've done is taken the simplified one and they've kind of blown it up. They times it by 4. So here's what I'm going to do. Move number 1. I'm going to divide it. I'm going to simplify it back down. So I'm going to divide it by 4, because I know that 4 goes into each of those 3. So if I rewrite this as 4 times each piece, I gotta divide each piece. So what is 4 divided by 4? And that is just 1b squared. What is 8 divided by 4? And that is 2b. And the last one, what is 140 divided by 4? And that is a minus, since it's minus 35. Okay, so now let's look at the inside. Let's factor this. So this is a two-step factoring problem. First, you got to simplify it down by dividing by what they got in common, and then you got to factor this the parentheses. So I'm looking for something that times this and gives you a negative 35, but adds and gives you 2. I go through and I'm going to use a 5 and a 7 somehow. One of them must be negative, because when I times, my answer is negative. Which one of those two is negative? It's got to be the 5. So my final answer is going to be the 4 times x minus 5. Guess they should be b's, but that's okay. I'm changing them to x's. X plus 7. This is it. Okay, let's look at another one. Let's look at 4 is pretty tough. Let's look at 4. Okay, number 4. Each of these have what do they have in common? You can divide them all by the number 4, but they also have some letters. Each of those 3 terms has a letter. So I'm looking to take away as many letters as I can, and each one has at least 1 that I can divide out. So if I divide each of those 3 pieces by 4x, here's what I'm going to get. I'm going to get 4x times, okay, 4 divided by 4 is just 1, but x cubed divided by x, if I take an x out of this x cubed, it's only going to leave me with x squared. Okay, the middle term, 36 divided by 4, I know that's a 9. But if I divide an x out of x squared, that's only going to leave me with an x. And then this last 80 divided by 4, that's going to be 20. But if I take x out of the x, that's nothing left. So you can check it by multiplying this to each piece. And if you multiply the 4x to each piece, it should give you 4x cubed plus 36x squared plus 80x. But now look at the middle. What can I times to get 20, but add to get 9? And I know that's going to be a 4 and a 5, and everything is positive, so I'm going to leave it positive. So my final answer is going to be 4x times x plus a 4 and x plus a 5. Okay, let's look at one more. So we'll do half of them, you do the other half. Let's look at 5. Okay, number 5, there's 3 pieces. And what do they have in common? Stare at them. They're all divisible by 2. They're all even, so I'm going to divide them all by 2. And the letters, each of the 3 terms has a letter, so I'm going to divide out what I can. I'm going to take a k away from all of them. So if I divide 2k cubed by 2k, that's going to give me 2k times 1k squared. If I divide a negative 18 by 2, that's going to be a negative 9. K squared divided by k is k. 28k divided by 2k is going to be, what is that, 14? Okay, now I'm looking for what is going to multiply and give me 14, but add and give me a negative 9. And you should stumble across a 7 and a 2. But they both must be negative, because negative 7 and a negative 2 is going to be a negative 9. But a negative 7 times a negative 2 is going to be positive 14. So my final answer is going to be 2k times k minus 7 and k minus 2. So those are the ones that are a little bit harder. But only because first you have to simplify them down. You got to divide out what each piece has in common. Okay, now let's factor this and graph it. So you're given a function and it's a quadratic. Because of this exponent is a 2, you know it's a quadratic, and every quadratic is going to look like a parabola, either upside down or right side up. So I know just by looking at it that it's going to look something like that. Okay, it's given to me in standard form, and I need to factor it. So let's factor this. What's going to times and give you a negative 18, but add and give you a negative 3? And the answer is, I think a 6 and a 3 somehow. One of them's got to be negative, because they times and give you negative, and it's going to be the bigger one. Because when I add them, my outcome is negative. So that must mean I have more negatives than positives. So negative 6 and 3. So here we go. Move number 1. Y equals x minus 6 times x plus 3. Okay. So that's your first move. Factor it. Now, when it is factored, it is very easy to plot the roots. The roots are your zeros. And your zeros are going to land on the x-axis. I need 2 dots that land on the x-axis, or 1 dot. So let's see how many dots are going to land on the x-axis. Here's what I know about if it's landing on the x-axis. If it lands on the x-axis, the only way for a dot to land on the x-axis is to go left or right. You never go up and you never go down. The y is what goes up or down, so I know this. I know my y is 0. Now, if you know your y is 0, that's a big deal, because if you know the answer is 0, you can now look at the problem and do some deduction. So look, your answer is 0, and this is a times problem. It's the first group of parentheses times the second group of parentheses. The only way you can times and get 0 for an answer is if you times by 0. So now the question I'm asking you is this. X is going to be what? What are you going to plug in place of X and then take away 6 and then times by this other group, and your answer is 0. And you should think to yourself, X has to be 6. Because if X is 6, 6 take away is 6, that's a 0. 0 times 6 plus 3 is all 0. So that is one of my roots. So this dot, 6, 0, come over here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, put a dot right there. Okay, your other dot is going to be this group right here. What are you going to put in place of that and then add 3 to get 0? And it is a negative 3. So negative 3 will also give you 0. So now I'm going to go left 3 and put a dot. Okay, there are your zeros. Once you've got your zeros, you need to find halfway between them. You need the vertex now. So if I find the midpoint of these two zeros, I'm just going to take this dot, which is 6, this dot, which is negative 3. I'm going to add them together, which is 3, and I'm going to find the average of that. 3 divided by 2 is 1.5. So 1.5 right in between 1 and 2. I'm going to come over here to my table and I'm going to put 1.5 in for my x, because that's how far I'm going over. I know I go over 1.5. Now my last question is, if I know the x, how do I find the y? How do I figure out how far up or down I'm going? And that's pretty easy. If you know the x and you need to find the y, all you do is take this x and plug it into your model and do the math. So this is calculator from here on out, and you can use the factored one or you can use the original one that you started with. It doesn't matter. So let's plug 1.5 in. So parenthesis 1.5 minus 6 parenthesis 1.5 plus 3, and I get a negative 20.25. Just kind of a big number, so maybe you think I did it wrong. You're not sure, so you could plug it into this one, and if you get the same answer, then you know 100% you got it right. But we're going to feel good about it. We're going to go over 1.5, down a negative 20.25. It's off the graph, and there is my parabola. It's going to look just like that. Okay, what about multiple choice? If I give you a picture, can you tell me which one it matches up with? So look at your zeros. Look at your roots right here. Your roots happen at 1, 0 and negative 2, 0. And here's what you gotta know. What is in your table and what is in your equation are opposite. So in my table I have a 6 and 0, a negative 3 and 0, but in my equation I have a minus 6 and I have a plus 3. So from one to the other they're opposite. So if I try and write an equation using my roots, so my model is y equals a, x plus or minus some root, x plus or minus some root. So y equals a, x. If I'm going to plug in these roots, I know one of them is a 1 and one of them is a 2. The question is it a plus 1, a minus 1, is it a plus 2, or a minus 2? And it has to be a minus 1 and a plus 2. Because when I plug in 1, so 1 is my x, that gives me y for 0. So when I plug in 1 into this equation, what is 1? Take away 1, that's 0. That's what I got to get. And when I plug in a minus 2, that's going to give me a 0. So from the table, or the picture, to your equation, the signs get changed. They're opposite. Okay, now look at our A, B, C, D. I know I can eliminate C and D because in front of them they have a negative, and I know that negative means that it's going to flip it upside down. So because this is right set up, it has to be the first or second, and I'm going to go with the first. So this one was nice because we didn't even need to find A. We didn't need to find how wide or skinny it is. So we're in good shape. Okay, this one, same thing, multiple choice, but they want you to factor it. So let's factor it. What's going to multiply and give you a 4, but add and give you a 5? And that's going to be a 1 and a 4. So here we go. Y equals x plus 1 and x plus 4. Okay, now, if I want to plot this, because it's factored, I'm going to find the zeros. So my zeros, what am I going to plug in for x? That's going to give me a 0, and I know that's going to be a negative 1, and this is going to be a negative 4. So start looking at these graphs. Which ones have dots on negative 1 and negative 4? So A, negative 1 is right there, negative 4 is there, so I'm going to kill A. B, negative 1 works, negative 4 works, so maybe it's B. Let's look at C. Nope, C's out, and D is close, but it is also out. So the multiple choice is kind of nice. Okay, let's look at 8. Now you're asked to sketch a graph of the function. Okay, these functions are not in standard form and they are not in factored form. You need to know two models. You need to know factored and you need to know the vertex model. Okay, the vertex model is y equals ax minus h squared plus k. So when you've got parentheses and a square, this is actually easy. It's an easy model. The vertex, my vertex, is the h and the k. So if I look at number 8, my vertex is going to be in here and right there. So you're going to look at the number inside the parentheses, and that tells you how far left or right you're going. That's your horizontal shift. So you start here at 0, 0. We're going to go left, right, up, down, somewhere and put a vertex. Plus 3, that means you're going to go 3 units to the left. So this one is kind of backwards of what your common sense tells you. I'm going to go 3 to the left, and then this one is okay. This one outside, that is your up and down. That tells you how far up or how far down. And it's a minus 3, and that is actually down 3. So that one's okay. The only one that's tricky is this one in the parentheses, and it is backwards what you think it should be. So I'm going to go left 3, down 3, and there is my vertex. So left 3, down 3, and the vertex is your most important point. So I need to find I need to find another point that's in the neighborhood of my vertex. So you're going to find the point before it or the point after it. You're going to try either a -2 or a -4. And it doesn't matter which one. If we try a -2, if you have the x but you want the y, all you do is take the x, plug it into your model, do the math, and it will give you the y. So if I take -2 and put it in for x, it's going to be a -3 times a -2 plus 3 squared minus 3. -2 plus 3, parentheses first. This is 1. Exponents next. 1 times 1 is 1. So a -3 times 1 minus 3 is just going to be a -3 minus 3, which is going to be a -6. So now go left 4 and down 6. And because this is your vertex, that's the dead center, this is going to reflect across the vertex, and you get 3 dots, connect them, and it should be concave down. You're expecting it to be down because that is a negative. Okay, now look at 7. 7 tells you to go -4 in the parentheses. So is that left or is that right? And that is right. You're going to go right 4 and you're going to go up 3. So right 4 up 3. There we go. There's my vertex over 4 up 3. Try a dot after it or before, and I'm going to try 5. 5 right there. 5 take away 4 is 1. 2 times parentheses 1 squared plus 3. Exponents next. 1 squared is 1. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 plus 3 is 5. So 5 is going to give me a 5. Over 5 up 5. Over 3 up 5. Done. So not too bad. Okay, now let's look at same kind of idea, but now it's kind of a multiple choice. So look at A, B, C, D. A, B, C, D, they are all in vertex form. So let's see if we can cross some of them out. My vertex is at left 4, so -4, and down 3. Okay, so if I were to plug that into my model, y equals a x minus h squared plus k, I'm going to plug it in like this. Y equals a x. Okay, I went to the left 4. So it's going to be a 4, but is it going to be a +4 or is it going to be a -4? And it's actually going to be +4. Okay, now plus k. K, I went down 3, so that's going to be a -3. So look right here. This is my h, and this is my k. My k is this, my h is this. So if I plug my k into the model, it gives me a -3. But look, if you plug h into your model is a times x minus whatever the h is, and my h is a -4. So that's where I'm getting the plus, because when I plug that into my model, there's already a minus in the model. So if I plug that in, it's going to change that to a plus. So now here's what we're looking for. We're looking for a +4 and a -3. And it's going to be B. B has the +4 and the -3. Okay, now the complete the square. So complete the square. You want to create a number of your choice that is going to make this a perfect square. And it all depends on the middle. So -12. Here's what I'm after. I want something that adds and gives me a -12. But I want it to add its exact self. So it's going to be a -6 and a -6. But if you times those together, you're going to get 36. So the number you're after is 36. Because if you have x squared minus 12x plus 36, that's going to be x minus 6 times x minus 6. And that is a perfect square. You can change that to a perfect square. Number 18. what number is going to add itself and give you 9? And the answer is 4.5 and 4.5. But what is 4.5 times 4.5? 4.5 times 4.5 is going to be 20.25. So when I factor it, it's going to be x plus 4.5 times x plus 4.5. And that is the same thing as x plus 4.5 squared. Okay, I'm going to stop this and we'll split it into 2 parts. So that is the end of part 1. Part 2 in just a moment.